Hello everyone, I'm back. This is round 4. Round 3, I took a bye. It was the third round of the game, or third game of the day. I was feeling pretty awful about how my first 2 games went. Even though I won the second game, I was not happy and not really feeling great. And I was in Kansas City, and I had an old college buddy I hadn't seen in like 10, 12 years, and he was hanging out, and so I went to go hang out with him and just relax instead of playing round 3. I don't like playing 3 games in one day. It's just too much, and I already wasn't feeling great. So I took that game off, came back the next day, and I was feeling pretty good. I totally kind of put out what happened in the previous 2 games and was ready to play another one. I had the white pieces, and this time we got a Nimzo-Indian. And I was feeling pretty good because I like these kinds of positions. You know, we play this knight f3 line that's not the most common. It's not e3, it's not queen c2, so hopefully we're going to know this a bit better. We have castles, bishop g5, h6, and now d5, and I'm like, okay, this is exactly my favorite sort of like Nimzo lines. I just play e3, and eventually I'm going to capture here, and we're going to have a Carlsbad structure, and I'm probably going to play some sort of minority attack, or I'm going to play e4, or something like that, and we're going to be happy. The prep that I have is against this move, which is the most common move, but he plays c5, which is a really common move that happens in a lot of variations, but we don't actually, the ChessGoals course doesn't actually cover it in this variation. And so I spent some time here, and I decided I wanted to go for an isolated queen's pawn position. I captured here, expecting that he would capture this way, and then I was going to capture here, and I figured that something like this was going to happen, and I would just play rook to c1. Again, you can't really take here. I mean, you can. It's not the end of the world, but you might have some trouble getting your pawns back. For example, if you try to play queen e5, attacking both pawns, well, now I can capture here. I'm defending this guy, and once you capture this way, I can grab here. And we get something kind of similar to the game, except for it's black who has the isolated queen pawn, and these pawns are absolutely shattered, and I should be pretty happy with this kind of a position. So I thought something like this. But after takes, surprised me. Took with the queen, which I certainly didn't expect. The whole reason this bishop is here is because this pins this knight, and should discourage this move. So I captured and takes, and now I had a big think. And I didn't come up with the best plan here. I misevaluated what was ultimately going to happen. I should probably play bishop to d3 and accept this isolated queen pawn. The idea is I would like to leave the queens on because his king is less safe than mine. But I somehow thought with the bishop here and the queen already lined up that black was going to get too much pressure against this pawn. So say like knight c6, but it's just not true. I just castle. Now the queen's got to move. You don't have time to capture my pawn. And even if you did, let's ignore the fact that I can take here. I can just take. And you can't take my knight because I have this check and I pick up the queen. But even without this knight hitting the queen, you still can't. And if the queen just backs up, no problem. I actually have this nice move queen e4, and the queen would have to move again. And even if the queen didn't have to move again, let's say you played this move, I think I can still play knight e4, but I actually have d5 now. And the point is that when you take here, I can play knight takes d5, and I'm hitting this bishop. You can't take it because of the same thing as here, and this king is wide open. So this should have been the way to go, but I just misevaluated the tactics that would let me get away with something like this. And so instead I played bishop to e2, intending that after captures, I was just going to take with the queen. But even here, I should still keep the queens on the board. Keep the queens on the board because this king is weak. But I thought that this ending, which is exactly what we got, should be better for me. And the reason that this was better for me, because I thought it was going to be awkward for black to develop these 2 pieces. I thought I have 2 developed pieces already, and I should be able to create some problems. That's just bogus. It's just flat wrong. The position's ever so slightly better for black, actually, and it has a lot to do with this pawn, which I thought I would be able to get enough counterplay that this pawn would never be weak. So black plays knight to d7, which is just the cleanest way to develop. You know, of course not c6, because I'll just take it and we'll have dueling weak c pawns, and I would be perfectly happy. But knight to d7, send it to c5, and the c5 is a great outpost. It can be defended by a pawn, which he's probably going to play b6 at some point anyway, and I can't ever kick it. And the only thing that can ever fight for it would be this knight. And so this is just a great square, whereas my knight looks pretty nice. It's not really doing anything here, and it's not stable. At some point, black's going to play e5. And I thought at some point maybe I would try to put the knight on d6. I thought it was a good square. Instead I played long castles, which I thought this was like super clever. I was like, yeah, I'm bringing the rook to the d file. I had it in my head I was somehow eventually going to get rook to d7. That's a pipe dream. But I just give knight c5, and I thought that my king was going to be close to the c-pawn, and this would be great. It's just not true. I mean, this this rook probably belongs on the c-file. Almost certainly. Or sorry, the b-file. And it can join with some pressure here, and I can try to get something going. Maybe I can even play knight b3, knight a5, and try to put some pressure here. But, you know, I castled this way, knight c5 happened, and I thought I had like this sort of clever way I was just going to remove it. So I played bishop f3 because I still thought that b6 was the move that they wanted. And the point being that, like, you can't really play here, except for you kind of can, because I would play here, and you would be forced to take, and I would capture back, and then you would be forced to play, say, bishop c6, or, bishop c6. And when I would grab it, go here, and we would get here. And this is the kind of thing that I was envisioning was going to happen. And it just didn't, because, you know, e5 happens. And so I kick the knight back, but the problem is that I don't have this pressure here, so black's not forced to take, and plays this knight to a4, which I didn't even consider. It hits this pawn. I can't really defend this pawn because, well, we have this check. And e4 is just a move I do not want to play because it shuts in my bishop. And even though it's the best move, I mean, if I want to try to hang on to this pawn at this point, I got to play here, which that's a sad move. I mean, a super sad move because I'm going to lose the pawn anyways. It's going to give a check. I got to move again. I'm going to lose the pawn. So I can't do that. So I play c4. But I don't really want to play c4 because that's getting this pawn further away from my king, which was supposed to be here to help develop or help protect it, and now I can't. The king's just a liability. But notice what black has done. All of the things I thought were going to be hard for him are not hard at all. He got this knight out. This knight's super active. He's got a beautiful square for the bishop. He's going to have a couple files to put his rooks on, and my king is not helping with the defense. My king is now a liability. So rook to b8 happens, just freeing out this bishop to come, and the rooks are going to be fantastic. Again, I'm only slightly worse now, but it's just becoming increasingly more unpleasant, and psychologically, I'm upset because I realized that, like, what I thought was going to be a position that was going to be hard for black to play, and I was going to have some pretty easy, comfortable play, turned out to be exactly the opposite. So I played rook to d6, he played bishop e6 as I expected, and then he played here, and I expected that he was just going to take. I thought he would take, and then my intention was to... I expected him to play here, and then my intention was to capture, and then I thought I would, you know, take this guy, and he would take back, and that I would slowly kind of try to walk this pawn up so that when he tried to grab it, I could bring the king in. Something like this is what I was thinking. Glad I didn't really go for that. It's awful. So instead, he played rook c8, and so I capture, and I should not grab this pawn. I need to go even more passive than I already am and play knight to d2. and try to hold this. I would allow knight to c5 back, and I just have to play this really uncomfortable position. Instead I went for this pawn, and black actually misses a pretty nice idea. He captures the pawn like he should, and then I play king to b1, and here's where there's a cool idea, because this rook is actually incredibly short on squares. What I saw is I thought he would play knight to c3. I would play here out of the way, and then I like this move. And I don't have f3, because if I play f3, well, now king f7 comes, and this rook is trapped. I don't have a single square. So what I expect is I would have to play here, and then I would just lose this pawn for nothing. I mean, I can try to attack it, but then the knight comes here. It's setting really nice on this square, and yeah, I'm just down a pawn, and I don't, yeah, maybe I'm okay. Maybe I have more play here than I thought I did, because my rooks are a little bit active. Maybe I can try to target this pawn. Maybe I can, you know, I can try to come in here and maybe get to the 7th, and perhaps I might have some counterplay here. But instead, chose to play king f7 immediately, which for the moment I was like, I played back, he comes here, and it kicks me back to d2. And I'm starting to think that maybe I'm going to be okay now. It's still worse for me. He plays b5, and I played here, just trying to, I want to trade rooks. Even if this move, I was planning to play rook to c1, because now we have to trade rooks. And I thought if all the rooks come off the board, then I have significant chances. It's annoying because I can never play rook to d1 and go rook d7 because of knight c3. So I played here, and he misses the opportunity to play knight c3 anyway. He gives me a check, I come up, and he could play here, and then this knight is permanently cemented here. And I don't know when I'll ever figure out how to get this knight out of the picture. This would be incredibly unpleasant to play. Instead, plays king to e6, bringing his king up, and I'm bringing the knight out, kicking that rook. Now, I can't take because, well, this is a pen, and I would just lose the knight, so I can't do that. Oops. So I play knight a5, and he captures, plays here, and by this point, I'm down to like 5 or 6 minutes, and he's down to like 2 or 3. I wasn't quite sure how to evaluate this knight and pawn ending, but I thought it had to be better than the rooks harassing my king. And it is, well, it's just an equal knight ending, but it's complicated. I say equal because the computer says equal. In a situation where my opponent has 3 minutes and I have like 5 or 6, somebody's probably gonna win this. He plays e4, which I think is already a step in the wrong direction. Gives me this square, which gives my knight pretty quick access to the other side of the board. So I think this was kind of the first mistake. I played knight c6 immediately, and that's going to force this pawn up the board, which is another reason why this e4 is not great, because the pawn comes up the board, which brings them closer to my knight and king. So a6 is forced, and I had kind of an interesting idea here that I didn't have a lot of time to evaluate, but I thought I would play like this, and then I thought this would force knight to c6, and then I thought I would try to play up this way, and I thought I had this cool idea of me playing king to b4, and then if here, like this, and this is a totally winning pawn in game, but it turns out it's not, because in this situation, black can just play king to d5, and if I try to play here, well, then knight to d3 happens, and I'm going to lose this pawn, and then I'm probably going to lose all my pawns, and then this one's going to promote. This d3 square ends up being an important resource that white never takes advantage of. So I did see that that idea didn't work, and so instead I just brought the king up, which is fine. I thought this was a slightly better place for the king, but it does allow this check, and then he can come here again. So perhaps it was better to leave my king back where it was, say play knight d4, and try to come target these pawns. So I play king to b3, my idea being that maybe I would come here and just grab this pawn. He brings his king in, I do go to d4 now, and I'm threatening this check right here. Still equal, he should still play knight c5, knight to c5, And then I need to play king to c3 so that if he goes here, I can advance this pawn. And he's forced into something like this. And now this knight can move to e5. And we have a pretty equal-ish kind of structure. And this is going to be probably should be a draw. Because this knight's over here to help. I can try to come over this way, but his king can just follow me. And I don't have an easy way to create a passed pawn. Instead, I play h5. And I played h4 almost immediately, which is not the best move. But I really didn't have time to calculate, and I just wanted to fix this pawn. I thought it was going to be too difficult to try to protect it. But again, knight c5, knight d3, and targeting this pawn is going to give the counterplay that black needs. Instead, he plays here, which just loses immediately. Totally lost, even though I didn't initially see it. Well, I saw a win, but not the best win. The best win, I just played g4. And what are you going to do? You've stepped outside of the square of the pawn, and okay, you can try to run back, but I have takes, and then what are you going to do? Are you going to continue trying to run back? But now I have like this knight f5, and I have a passed pawn now, and your king is frozen. I can walk up and take these and get another passed pawn. This should be just a straightforward win. Instead of playing knight to e6, he plays this way, and now it's even easier because the king's further away. I just missed this g4 idea. I just missed it. I was focused on going and grabbing this pawn. So we got this guy, and now the knight comes over, and I was looking for opportunities to try to fork the king and the knight to free up this. So we bring this guy up, and so for example, if he had played like even left the king here and just played, say, like this move. Well, now I can play h6, and let's say something like here. Well, I have knight d5 to capture, and then I push. I was looking for ideas like that. I didn't have a lot of time to find them. He was also looking for them, so it didn't happen. So instead, he brings the king back, and I give this check, and I come here, and I win the knight. But we're in crazy time pressure, and I don't actually know, because his idea is clear. He distracts my king to let his king in, and comes here, and with just maybe, I'm less than a minute, he's down to 15 seconds or so, and I saw this idea, and I wasn't even sure if this was winning. It turns out it is, and the variation I was kind of counting on works by one move. Turns out I can actually just takes, and I can just walk the king over, something like this. And this is a simple win, but somehow that didn't occur to me. The variation I saw went something like this. And we have this kind of race, which I win by just one tempo. And this is a straightforward win if you know how to do it. Thankfully, this is not an f-pawn, because if this is an f-pawn, this is a very different situation. So yeah, as soon as I played knight takes, he resigns, and we get a second win, which we're pretty happy with. This is probably the best game I played, even though totally misevaluated that ending. And going back here to this position, definitely should have been willing to accept this IQP, and it would have been incredibly difficult. This is incredibly difficult for black to play, because just natural-looking moves lead them to a lot of trouble. For example, if they want to try to maintain any equality at all, they have to play e5, which seems strange because it just lets me take, and then you have to come up with this rook d8 move, and sorry, not that, rook actually d8, and we can play bishop to e2, and now you capture this pawn, and your king looks quite wide open. I don't think this is that easy for a human to see, and I wouldn't expect very many humans to come up with this. At least not humans rated 1950 to 2000, which is what I'm playing. And this is clearly the way to have gone, and I would have had a much better game. So we're, 3 games in. I've managed to win 2, even though I was pretty bad at both points in both games, and we're rearing on to game 4. Or, sorry, game 5, round 5. Anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Bye-bye.